August 12, 1953, Livonia, Michigan. A welder's torch drops a spark into a solvent conveyor. By that evening, the largest industrial fire in American history has taken out the only plant on Earth building the hydromatic automatic transmission. 6 people dead, $80 million gone, 93,000 General Motors employees sent home, and Cadillac has nothing to shift with. So GM improvises. Cadillac and Oldsmobile get Buick Dynaflows crammed into cars that were never designed for them. Pontiac gets something cheaper. Pontiac gets the Chevrolet Powerglide. Roughly 17,000 1953 Pontiacs rolled out with the 2-speed from the grocery getter division bolted underneath. Here's the thing. That is the least embarrassing thing GM ever did with the Powerglide. Because over the next 23 years, GM built more than 17 million of them, and not one single buyer was ever told which one they got. 2 different transmissions, same case, same badge, same money on the window sticker. One of them holds 800 horsepower. The other one comes apart at 550 and sends the pieces through the pan. GM knew. GM printed nothing. Start at the beginning, because the beginning already tells you what kind of company you were dealing with. January 1950, Chevrolet drops the Powerglide as a $159 option and only on deluxe models. On a car that's stickered between 1529 and 1991, that was about a 10% bump. It was the first automatic transmission ever offered in the low-priced field. Ford had nothing until 51, Plymouth had nothing until 54. Chevrolet also quietly upgraded the engine to make it work. Powerglide cars got the 235 cubic inch 6 with hydraulic lifters and 105 horsepower instead of the standard 216 and 90. The rear axle dropped from 411 to 355 to keep the driveline quiet. And here is the first thing Chevrolet did not put in the brochure. The 1950 through 1952 Powerglide did not shift. It had 2 speeds, low and drive. It would not move between them on its own. You started in drive and let the torque converter drag the car off the line like an anchor, or you started in low and manually bumped it up to drive somewhere around 30 or 40 miles an hour. Chevrolet was selling a shiftless driving experience where you still shifted. They just charged you for the privilege of only doing it once. That got fixed in 1953. Drop it in drive, it starts in low and upshifts on throttle position. Small change on paper, enormous change at the dealership. By the middle of the decade, roughly half of every new Chevrolet leaving the lot had a Powerglide in it. 1962 is when GM redesigned it from scratch. Pressure cast aluminum case instead of gasketed cast iron, over 100 pounds lighter, built for the Chevy 2 first and then rolled across the lineup. The cast iron unit was gone by 63. That aluminum Powerglide is the one racers still run today, and that aluminum Powerglide is where GM buried the secret. There were 2 planetary gear sets. Behind the 6s and the 4-cylinders, Chevrolet installed a 1.82 to 1 low gear. Behind the V8s, they installed a 1.76. Now, 1.76 is the taller ratio, numerically lower, less multiplication off the line. So on paper, the cheap 6-cylinder car got the more aggressive gear, and if you stopped reading right there, you would think the 6-cylinder buyer came out ahead. He did not even close, because the ratio is not the story. The carrier is the story. The 1.82 Planetary rides in a stamped steel carrier with removable pins. 3 screws and the pins come out. Transmission builders will tell you flatly that a stamped carrier is done at somewhere around 550 horsepower, and when it lets go, it does not just stop working, it twists apart and fills the case with metal. The 1.76 Planetary rides in a cast steel carrier with pins that do not come out. Heavier gears, machined, not stamped. Real-world limit is somewhere near 800 horsepower. Same transmission on the parts book, same Powerglide cast into the side of the case. Nothing on the RPO sheet, nothing in the owner's manual, nothing at the dealership telling a single human being which one was under the floor. So racers figured out how to read it themselves, in junkyards, with calipers. Pull the input shaft out of an assembled unit and measure it. 12 5/8 inches is the 1.82, 12 7/8 is the 1.76, or measure the output shaft across the splines. About 1.150 is the weak one, about 1.170 is the good one. That is the entire trick. 0.2 of an inch of shaft is the difference between a transmission that survives and a transmission that grenades. Guys were walking rows of dead Novas in 1972 with a dial caliper in their back pocket, pulling shafts and putting the good ones in the truck. Chevrolet gave them a spec sheet. It just wasn't the one Chevrolet printed. And there was a third Powerglide. Almost nobody knows this one exists. Spring of 1968, Chevrolet releases RPO MB1. They called it Torque Drive. It was an aluminum Powerglide with a valve body and the shift solenoids deleted, and no vacuum modulator hole in the case. The column quadrant read Park, R, N, High, First. It could not shift itself at all. You started in first, and when the engine got loud, you pulled the lever to high. $68.65. Read that again. In 1968, with the Turbo 350 already in development and the Turbo 400 already in big block cars, Chevrolet was selling a transmission that behaved exactly like a 1950 Powerglide. They took 18 years of engineering back out of it and sold it as a value option on Novas, Camaros, and eventually the Vega. About 14,000 were built before it disappeared. GM did not go forward with the Powerglide. GM went backward with it and put a price tag on that. Then the drag racers got hold of it. And every single thing that made the Powerglide cheap turned into an advantage. One shift. That is the whole argument. In bracket racing, you are not trying to be fast. You are trying to run the exact same number every pass. Every shift is a chance for the car to break loose, unsettle, or step out of the beam. A Powerglide shifts once. There is nothing else to get wrong. It is also light, and there is less rotating mass eating power before it reaches the tires than in the Turbo 400. And the tall gear is not the handicap people assume. Car and Driver tested a 1963 Impala, 409 4-barrel, 340 horsepower, 331 rear axle. Full throttle upshift from low to high came at 76 miles an hour. 76 in first gear out of a transmission your aunt drove to church. GM killed it after the 1973 model year. Turbo 350 and Turbo 400 took the whole lineup. 23 years, 17 million units, done. Except it isn't done, and this is the part that should bother somebody in Detroit. Right now, in 2026, you can buy a brand new Powerglide, not a rebuild, new. ATI sells a straight-cut ProGlide rated to 1,500 horsepower and recommends stepping up to the SuperGlide 4 above 2,500. TCI builds the Pro X completely new, not from a core, for cars running 670s at over 220 miles an hour. But go read ATI's own literature and you find the punchline. Above roughly 850 horsepower, they will not even reuse the factory case. Everything else was already gone. Billet drums, in-house input shafts cut from 4340 or 300M, billet valve bodies, new sprags. So the most successful transmission General Motors ever built is still winning races 53 years after they canceled it, and there is almost nothing left of General Motors inside it. GM sold 17 million of these and never told a single owner what was in the case. The racers found out with a caliper, threw away every part GM ever touched, and kept the name.